Regulation is such an important component of what we've been talking about. But what exactly is regulation? What do you mean by that?
Okay, so let me define emotional regulation for you. It's pretty simple, okay? It's that ability to notice when you are stressed, or notice when you are bored, or notice when you're hungry, or notice when you're off, and ask yourself, what's going on with me? Am I in a space to make decisions? Am I in a space to lead? How is my executive functioning? Because again, if you're emotionally, physically not regulated, your prefrontal cortex is not going to be humming along the way it should.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll be in fight, flight, and freeze. You'll be in a away state.
Mm-hmm.
So a great way to think about feeling emotionally regulated might be as simple as saying you're happy, you're joyful, you feel safe. You feel it's called toward reward state. Okay. You might even, as a leader, you might catch your team leaning in.
Yeah.
Like their body language might change. They might have a lot of laughter. Whereas if someone's not emotionally regulated, now it's really hard to tell. Okay. We hide it well. All right. But you could notice some things like a lot more fidgeting, especially for someone that maybe sits still, or a lot more talking for somebody that is normally quiet, or somebody that, physically moves away because they're protecting themselves. So emotional regulation is just this ability to have awareness of where you're at and where others are at, so that you can feel well and make good decisions.
What happens when you're not self-aware? You described when going into a meeting or conversation and taking the pause and checking, how do I feel? What's the temperature? But what if I don't pause?
All right, I'm going to tell you a story about my smartwatch, the same kind of thing, okay? And even just telling you the story, I know that my heart rate's going to go up. Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning that I'm an amateur triathlete, and I would say my husband would like me to tell you that my wedding ring is important, but my smartwatch is probably more important. So
it definitely tells you more.
I wear it a lot, and it tells me a lot of information. A lot of information. Okay, so I lost my smartwatch, kind of like losing car keys. I lost my smartwatch. And I panicked. And in the back of my head, I was like, I know it's under the bed. I know that it's got to be under the bed. That's where I left it. I left it on the bedstand. It's next to the bed. It's got to be under the bed. Panic, panic, panic. Retrace my steps. Run around the house. Did I leave it in my bag? Did I leave it at swimming? Did I lose it in the car? My husband, call him. He says it's under the bed. I'm like, I'm so not regulated. So I sat down on the couch. I took a deep breath. I went and looked under the bed. No, still couldn't see the smartwatch. Freaked out. I'm so not regulated. Sat down on the couch again. Did box breathing. Deep breaths. Got regulated. Looked under the bed. There was my watch. Like a fairy had put it there. So what happens when you're not regulated is you can actually lose your peripheral vision.
Wow. When
you are stressed out, you lose your working memory. You can't remember. I knew it was there. Back of my head was telling me it's there. Lose my working memory, heart rate, can't see, and don't ask me to make a decision. Like, okay, so you lose. Now, my kids are grown, but you lose your keys and you have little ones. And they're like, Mama. No. Do you get crabby?
Can't.
Right. You can't really do anything when you're stressed. Yeah. And so I think we often think about stress like work stress, but the truth is any kind of stress can cause us to really be blinded.
Yeah.
And then any kind of boredom can also cause us to be blinded, to cause us to lose our executive functioning.
Yeah.
Because of that decrease in neurotransmitters. So not being regulated can look very simple, especially in boredom, like tired, or it can look stress.
Yeah.
Can't see.
So I'm thinking about the skills that we can build as part of developing emotional intelligence and being more aware of this. And you just defined the 4 segments and the 4 sort of skills in the model of emotional intelligence for me.
Yeah.
The first one was self-awareness. And I'm conscious that so often we suppress what we're feeling. We might know, or we've been trained to sort of not acknowledge and push through. Yep. Is that something that people struggle with when they're trying to be more aware of their own emotions, the very first foundational part of this?
Oh, absolutely. There's a couple of reasons for that. We really, as humans, our brains are really built to protect us. And our brains work so fast, right? Okay. And we do what we learn. So we move really fast. So taking a pause, a beat to notice your own emotions takes training. Mm-hmm. It takes being taught how to do it, which is a newer thing.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't taught how to just pause and, hey, what are you feeling? Wasn't asked to me very often, right?
Yeah.
But it is the first step to say, what am I noticing about myself? Where am I at right now with my emotional regulation? Mm-hmm. Am I regulated?
Yeah.
Before I take action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can understand how, anyone can relate to when you're hungry, you might not be as rational. When you're tired, you might not be as rational. So the concept of taking a pause to notice more emotions than our needs, but yes, how we're feeling, how we're thinking, is important to set the stage to be able to build the other skills.
Yeah. One thing I like to do when I'm coaching people around self-awareness is I like to ask them not just how they're feeling. That's a tricky question. But what's your temperature? Are you hot? Are you cold? Does your back hurt? Does your body hurt? Mm-hmm. What are you noticing? Are you hearing a buzz?
I'd love to get some steps that people can take to implement this. So how do people start to be more self-aware?
Yes. Okay. So I love that. There's so many great actions you can take to become more self-aware. So the first thing that I would do is I would practice something I like to call name it to tame it. Okay.
The specificity is so important.
Name it to tame it. Okay. So I would encourage you to take the time to have a emotion or a feeling or even just a daily reflection journal. You're just naming good or bad. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be right or wrong. Just woke up this morning, felt great. After lunch, felt kind of foggy. Struggled in that meeting. Oh, I had a great meeting. And the emotion, like I was feeling hot, I was feeling cold, I was feeling hungry. It was right after lunch. It's the art of noticing your emotion.
Yeah. And I like the language that you use of foggy and good and hot and cold and hungry, because I think people can struggle with the labels that we might traditionally associate with emotions.
Yeah, fidgety or scratchy, or you can also say angry or sad or tired. But you can Google anything. You can find some really great emotional word lists. Yeah. You can find above the line word lists that are like happy and good and brave and courageous. And then you can find below the line word lists like sad, angry, frustrated, scratchy, itchy, right? So I would say the very first thing is to grab that journal and to name it, to tame it, to recognize it and notice it for self-assessment. Yes.
If I am below the line, what are the steps I can take to self-regulate?
Yeah. So let's say that you came from that really stressful meeting with your senior leader and you were feeling deregulated. Maybe you even had a headache from it. Okay. So some tactical things are rooted in wellness. Okay. So I'm going to mention a model to you around this.
No, I love a model.
Okay. It's a great model. It's called the Healthy Mind Platter. And it was written by Dr. Dan Siegel and Dr. David Rock, who is the head of the Neuro Leadership Institute. Okay. And the healthy mind platter is this idea of, 5 food groups, right? But it's mindfulness and embodiment activities that you can take. All right. So the first thing you can do is just take some downtime. Just take a breath, take a beat, take a nap, take a walk. Okay. Take some downtime. Another thing you can do is in that embodiment, you can take a wellness break, a breathing break. Okay. Now every app on every phone, on every watch has a breathing tool, right? Okay. So you could use a breathing app and do some deep box breathing. Okay. To get yourself regulated. You can also talk to somebody. Name it to tame it, reframe it.
The next step,
right? Reframe it. Yep. So talk to a coach, talk to a mentor, talk to someone that's going to ask you a good question. Also, maybe give you some empathy.
Yeah.
Like when I'm coaching, I have a 2-minute vent rule. So you come in and you're like, and you like vent, right? And then I'm like, okay, that's great. We've named it. Now let's tame it and reframe it. Okay. So then I'll ask you some really good questions to help you think differently about what just happened. Okay. So we can look up the Healthy Mind Platter. You can reframe it. You can get a coach. You can journal. You can find a mentor. All sorts. You can go to the gym.
Yeah.
Right? There's all sorts of very practical things that you can do to get regulated.